What's going on, guys? So it's JJ here, back with another video. I've been wanting to do this video for a very long time. I think I put it on my Instagram like a couple months ago, asking if people wanted me to do this tutorial. Most of you said you did want it, so here it is. So Touchdown-Raiz is one of my favorite moves that I've ever learned. It feels great and it also looks pretty cool as well. And when you do it right, you can get tons of power from it. Touchdown-Raiz is one of those moves that you either love it or you hate it. And a lot of people that I've seen, if they hate it, it's because they struggled to learn it. It took me a very long time to learn it, but the more I did it, the better I got. I've probably done it every session for the past 4 or 5 years. That's why it's my best setup. So let's start with the tutorial. You should ideally be able to do a raise before you do this move because it's progression from a raise, but it's not completely necessary to have a raise. It just helps. Also, being able to do a backflip or back handspring helps for this move because you're not scared to put your hand out and to go over your head a bit more. So this is going to be the first step for your Touchdown-Raiz. You can either do this on a flat floor like so, or you can grab a mat and do it onto it, which is how I first learned it. You're going to do a really lazy raise, and as you go into for the step, you're going to circle your arms and bring your arm around to the side, just for the start, like so. So I know what you're thinking, it doesn't really look that great, but practice that a couple times just to get used to putting your hand on the floor, taking the weight, landing on that foot. The important thing for this is that you put your hand on the floor before your first foot hits the ground. So there is that slight little time gap between your hand and your foot. Next thing you do is you start focus on kicking that left leg a little bit more, or your right leg, depending on which side you go. As you step, circle your arms, over. Then same thing, reach over to the side, but kick your first leg harder. You should start to invert a little bit more, so like this. At first, like you just saw, if there's a little bit of a jump, that's okay. So once you can do that part and have it so that your hand is landing before your foot and you're able to take that pressure on your hand, then you've basically got a Touchdown-Raiz. But it's a Touchdown-Raiz that you can't really use to swing out of yet. To be able to swing out of it or pop out of it for any other moves afterwards, there's a couple things that you need to think about and focus on just to perfect it so you can do that. Here's where people start to really dislike Touchdown-Raiz, when they struggle to swing out of it or pop out of it. When I look at someone's Touchdown-Raiz who really doesn't like Touchdown-Raiz, and it's because they struggle to do it, or maybe they can do it but they just can't swing out of it very well. There's usually 3 things that I look at when they're doing it. I look at their head, I look at their arm positioning, and I look at the first leg that comes up off the ground. So let's talk about your head positioning for an inverted TD raise. When you do an inverted TD raise, your head positioning is really important. When you step into it, make sure you're swinging your arms over the top. And to invert, you have to look backwards, almost like you're going to do a back handspring. That's why it helps if you don't have a fear of going backwards before you do this move. It doesn't feel like a back handspring, but your head positioning has to treat it like a back handspring. Watch the way my head goes back. It doesn't go over my shoulder like the last 2 that we did. My head is going to go a lot further back than the others. The second thing to think about for an inverted TD raise is your arm positioning. So when I do my TD raise and I teach people how to TD raise, I always emphasize the fact that you need to circle your arms over the top, and then you need to keep your arm on that line, because when you reach for your arm to touch the floor, you don't reach to the side, you've got to reach up by your head almost. And if you circle your arms over the top and keep your first arm in that line, it's already there. A good example of a tricker who uses this is Danny Ekin. I've watched him do some crazy tricks out of TD raise from standing, and the speed that his hands go over like this is incredible. And you can really see that he pulls his arms over like a circle. So once again, watch how I circle my arms, keep my arm on that line, reach up, and my head goes back as well. If your arm positioning is right and your head positioning is right, the next thing that has to be right is your leg positioning. To get an inverted TD raise, you need to have your arms going straight backwards, your head going backwards, but also your leg kicking backwards. And the best TD raises that you see, and you watch it in slow-mo, their leg almost goes straight back. So think about kicking that leg as hard as you can up towards the ceiling. The higher it goes, the better, and the more inverted your Touchdown-Raiz is going to be. Watch my arm positioning, my head and my leg. Okay, so the final thing that you need to think about when you do your TD raise is you do not need to jump high. If you jump high in your touchdown raise, you're going to have a large period where your hand is not on the floor, which means when it does go to touch the floor, it's going to be a lot more pressure on your arm and it's going to kill your power. The ideal TD raise is your arm is pretty much on the floor by the time that your second leg leaves the floor. So as this arm lifts off, this is my lead leg, then the one that I'm standing on right now, before that takes off, this arm should be on the floor, ideally. This makes it a lot easier to swing out of it as well. This is an example of jumping too high on your touchdown raise. After doing 4 of those, my wrist already hurts, and also I couldn't have swung any of those. Because as soon as my hand hit the floor, my 2 feet went like bang bang. There was no time for me to be able to focus on this leg and swing it through because it was already on the ground by the time I was going to think about it. So when you do it and you take off your touchdown raise, you need to circle your arms, drop your chest nice and low, because the lower you are, the easier it's going to be to put that hand on the floor. If you jump, you're going to end up dropping down onto your hand and hurting your wrist. So arms over top, chest down, spot the floor, keep circling, arms stay in that circle, reaching back, leg kicks up, and head goes back. So then you move on to your setups into TD raise. There's so many different ways that you can go to TD raise, but you've just got to find the right one for you. You've got your hook kick, you've got your spin step, but you've also got different types of hook kicks. You've got your pretty hook kick, which is just the snappy and then straight into your touchdown raise. You've got the one that I use when I'm trying to go for big power moves out of it, like triple core. Really long hook kick, so I like step, push, and just drive in that direction. You've got your spin step, and then you've got the little skip step, which is what I've been doing in the last couple that I've shown. This is a move that you've got to drill pretty much every session until you get it, and even then you still have to drill it. The more you drill it, the better it's going to get, and the more power you're going to feel from it. It does take time, but you've just got to stick with it, and eventually you will learn to love it. So that is it for this video. I hope this tutorial has helped you learn touchdown raise. Just remember, be patient with it, work it every session, and just keep going with it. If there's any questions you have about TD raise in general, just leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also, if there's any other tutorials that you would like me to do, leave a comment below for that as well. I hope you all learn to love TD raise as much as I do. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.